They know what they feel is the most appropriate answer. Who feels strongly? Anyone feel strongly about that? Yeah?
Yeah, I think teachers do have a huge impact on the classroom, what happens in the classroom. I mean, there's factors that I don't know, you've got no control over. There's cultural factors that they're involved in, you've got no control over. But you've got control over your classroom. And it's really how you work with your classroom and the kind of understanding you set up with your kids and the way you engage your kids and the way you talk to your kids.
Okay, all of that is true. But notice this is the outcome in all the educational objectives you have. So you're right, and you can say, look, I have very strong control over things that happen in my classroom. And the question is, do you have as much control over a firstborn as a secondborn?
I don't have, no, outside my classroom I have no control. Okay, I don't have control what happens at home. I don't have control about what happens with the parents. But when those factors do come into my classroom, there should be supports in place to deal with it.
Okay, you reckon you can accommodate for those?
Yeah,
okay, you can deal with...
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to solve those, and I'm in a position to deal with those, but there are people in the school that are.
Okay, let me try someone else, someone who feels that, no, this is unrealistic. Yeah?
I just believe what the students bring to school from home, the attitudes that they bring to school, really impacts on how much effect that you actually have in the classroom. You just see that coming through because you do work as hard as possible to build the relationships with these children. That unless you're being supported at home, you know, you're sort of battling. You know, it's a value that the students and their families put on education that really impacts on them.
Yeah, another way to think about this would be to think as you as a parent. If you send your child to a school, how much impact do you feel you have over those educational outcomes still as a parent, regardless of who their teacher is, more or less? And if you have none, then it's none. Then they have it all. If you have some, how much do you have? Yeah.
Say something. Look, I sometimes see a Jekyll and Hyde thing happening with children. They might not have a particularly good home environment, but for that 50 minutes within your class, it's something different, and you see the different kid come out, and that can be very powerful. So, I don't know, I've seen the opposite. I've seen where they can put aside what's happened before at home and they have a really good time in your class, and they can be real devils in the next one down. So it can happen. So
Yeah, and that's why we talk about averages. Some people you will have an enormous impact on. I'll give you an example. I talk about kinds of kids, and the most challenging kids you have the greatest potential for. The reason for that is the really challenging kids think they're hateable, right? They actually think they're hateable. That's one of the theories I'll be putting forward. For some of your most challenging children, they think not their behaviour is hateable, but they are hateable. And if you were to refuse to hate them, you would challenge their entire worldview, just like that. Because you can't be hateable unless everybody hates you. So if you could find one teacher who refused to hate you, that one teacher would have an enormous impact on you. So there are things like that where you will carry enormous amounts of variance depending on the circumstance of a student. But there are others, you know, I mean, I've taught at Bendigo where everyone wanted to be my friend, and a Q where, because I taught secondary, and a Q where they just wanted me to provide them with resources and let's get on with it, you know. And get me the exams from Trinity and Wesley and Scopus. Don't sort of ask me about what I did on the weekend, it's irrelevant. So it's that sort of thing. So it would depend. Okay, so for the record, by the way, which is more than most people would acknowledge. That's an average. That means for some people you do have 80%. And for others you hardly touch them. But on average, now that means that all the money that goes into capital expenditure, I'm on film, aren't I? Yeah. There could be some questions asked about a lot of things, I think, in terms of, and now they are asking, they're saying, look, the best resource you've got to work with are teachers, which is, I guess, where this project comes from. They're your key resource. If you're not working with the teachers, you're wasting your time. Because you can put what you like in a curriculum development and so on, but you need, and that, we've learned this with laptops. I mean, the early studies of laptops are classic. You know, the laptop became a third-rate sort of piece of notebook for many years until teachers knew what to do with them. And the same will be with the smart boards and all this sort of stuff. Until people know what to do with this stuff, it's an expenditure and it looks good on paper, but it may not make much difference in classrooms. So I want to start from the assumption that you make a huge difference, and what you say makes a difference, and how you stand will make a difference, and whether you say, do this, you know, excuse me, put the pen down. Excuse me. If you do that, that's one thing. I could say, excuse me, look, I need you to put it down. I could say, look, you're distracting a few people, put the pen down. Put it down, please. They're distracted. Okay, so I can do 3 different statements looking much the same body language-wise, and they're going to have 3 different impacts. And so can you. And so this is very important. It means that if I could get into a school through the teachers and say, try this and see what happens. Now, I've got 2 schools where I found they're doing it really, really well. And that's really because they, at least I don't know about the others, but in these 2, they tried it out for 6 months. They just tried this stuff. And then they decide, yeah, it made a difference. You know how they knew it made a difference? Because of CRTs. It's not what goes on in your classroom that counts. They'll do anything for you if you're a nice person. But it doesn't mean they're responsible. So the only way you're going to know is specialists, CRTs, and this kind of thing, that whether they're really responsible, they're just obedient. Because they can be obedient because they like you, or you like them, which is the same thing. Okay, so I'm starting from the premise that you will have an enormous impact. So if some of these things grab you and you try them out, they could have an impact according to this research. Fine. Now we've got a problem. We've got a problem. And it may be me. But I want to talk about 5 kinds of power. We've said you're powerful. So far all I've said is you are very powerful in the education of children. Some more than others, but on average very powerful. Now I want to talk about kinds of power. And the way I'm going to do it is to ask you some questions. For example, have you ever been asked by a policeman on Saturday night, they stand in the way of your motor car and they go like this? Yeah? Now it's usually about 20-year-old who's sort of this wide, and they're very tall, and they go like this, and what do? Pull over, yeah. You pull over. Now, and if I stood there on Saturday night, I carry more weight, I could do more damage to your car, but what are you going to do? Will you pull over? Keep going. The best I've heard so far is, on a good night, I'll go round you. Okay, so yeah, so you're not going to do it for me, but you'll do it for this 20-year-old beanpole. And the reason is? Uniform. And that's legitimate power. That is a kind of power. You have that power. You are a teacher. You have a role. It comes with the role. And sometimes we use it. We don't even know we're using it, of course. And I used it before and I said, put the pen down. I didn't give a reason. I just said, put the pen down. The implicit reason is that I'm the teacher and you're not. You're the student. I'm the teacher. Do what you're told. That's implicit. It's all in there. Now, we use it sometimes very overtly. You imagine this. You've got a grade. How many primes in here? How many secondaries? Okay, good match. You should mix more, by the way. It's going to be a real eye-opener to everybody. They are different cultures. I've been working in this field for 30 years, and just overwhelmingly different cultures, and could learn a lot from each other. Mainly secondaries and primaries, I hate to say it, but because I'm a secondary. But let's say I was a Year 8 teacher, and I walked in and I said, first day of term, I said, you're my Year 8 science. Good morning, Year 8. I'm your new science teacher. I'd like you to take out your notes now and look at the first page. We've got some expectations written there. Do it now.